And welcome to the 757 at 6 here on ESPN Radio 94.1. Thank you for spending your July evening with us. Matt Hatfield here with you. And at this time, it's the Legends Update with our friend Coach Charles Hatcher, Sports Inside and Out, the Legends of Sports. Find them on Facebook. Find them on podcasts. You won't be disappointed. You'll have a great time going down memory lane. And today, Coach Hatcher, we go down memory lane with one of the all-time greats from the Boston Celtics, the 10-time champion, Sam Jones.
Hey, listen, they talk this trash about guys got all these championship rings and all that kind of stuff, and he's humble in a lot of things. He's so direct in everything else, I'm tell you. So the only guy that got more championship rings than Sam, now he's got one for every finger, is Bill Russell. So ain't nobody got nothing else. Don't talk about Michael Jordan. Don't talk about all that. He's very candid at it as well. He said, my record proves for itself. This guy is probably not only the top 50 greatest small forwards in NBA history, one of the most respected people that you can ever know, not just as a humanitarian, but as an athlete. He's real. His word resonates very heavily, not just around the legend world. We've been with the Retired Players Association so long. Matter of fact, he was one of the guys that really pushed the Retired Players Association to get involved in the United States Army and everything that we do. But not only being an Army veteran himself, we collaboratively, I really think that I'm a young'un to him, but we really put in front of the Retired Players Association so much the importance of veterans and honoring our wounded warriors and whatnot. So he's a great guy, and it's a thrill to talk to him because you don't talk to many people. Sam is one of the most cantankerous guys you ever want to see, but he speaks when he wants to talk. So having him here on the Matt Hatfield show with the Legends Update at 94.1 there in Tidewater, it is something special. So I'm going to let you go because he'll tell you exactly what you need to know. He'll give you what you call the news you can use, man, to turn you over to Sam.
That's right. As from our Norview living legend, Coach Charles Hatcher, Sports Inside and Out, to now the 10-time NBA champion of the Boston Celtics, 5-time All-Star. That jersey number 24, it hangs in the rafters there in Boston with the C's. The Hall of Famer Sam Jones with us here on ESPN Radio 94.1. Sam, it's a real pleasure to talk with you. How's life treating you?
Matt is treating me very, very nicely. Being 87 years old, I've got to worry about this virus that's going around, especially in Florida, where we have a high rate of coronavirus that are attacking us. And now they're talking about having the Republican National Convention here, and we're trying to stop that.
Yeah, it's not a great time in our world with everything going on, but certainly we wish you all the best and hope things go well for you down there in the Sunshine State. Sam, you drafted 8th overall in 1957 by the Celtics. What did you think at that time, and could you ever imagine your career would turn out the way that it did?
No way. I got to tell you right now, you got to think something. That was 10 years after Jackie Robinson. Mm-hmm. But I was the first black player from a Division II and from all the black colleges and universities, drafted number one in any sport, basketball, baseball, or football in those times. And I felt like Jackie Robinson. If I could make the Boston Celtics as the number one draft choice, they would look into other black schools because they were not looking into the black schools for black players. And you may not know this, in 1957 when I reported to the Boston Celtics, there could be only 2 black players on each team. There was a quota because that's what the commissioner wanted. Only 2 black players on each team. So I didn't make the team because of my talent. I made the team because Bill Russell was the only black player on the Boston Celtics at that time. So I was told by a reporter in Boston.
Wow. Well, you mentioned the name Jackie Robinson. We know how powerful and instrumental he was on and off the field. And you bring up Bill Russell, the only guy who's got more rings than you, as Coach Asher said, with 11 there. Tell me about Bill. And I know in a lot of ways he was a trailblazer for professional sports and African Americans. And on and off the court, what made him so special?
Well, Bill Russell was a winner. And not only that, he made us better players because they talk about the GOAT today, G-O-A-T, the greatest of all time. How is it that you compare anybody with Bill Russell? I just think about this as I go down this history. They went 56-0. and 2 years at San Francisco, University of San Francisco. They won 2 NCAA championships. When he left there, he went to the Olympics in 1956, and they won the Olympics. And he came back with the Boston Celtics in December. They had never won a championship until they brought in Bill Russell. And from that day on, for 13 years, he played in 13 Eastern Division Finals. He went to 12 NBA Finals, and he won 11 NBA championships. There is no comparison to what he could do.
It's hard to argue, Sam. And the thing I think people forget about, back in your era, when you guys played, people talk about, well, these guys today, the Jordans, the LeBrons, the Kobes, and so forth. And there's always been the argument of the dominant big men, with certainly the likes of Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain. You get to more modern people such as Kareem and Shaq. But back when you guys played, they didn't always chart block shots. And if they did completely, I think he would have shattered the records. And secondly, there was no three-point line back then. So the numbers are skewed today as compared to back in the 50s and 60s.
Well, I could say this, Matt. I've been asked, are the players better today than we were? And my answer is yes. But give us the same thing that these players have today, such as personal trainers, nutritionists, travel first class, or have their own planes, can leave where they can go, have the equipment, make them better players. If we had the same thing, yes, we would be just as good. But we did not have those things. So yes, they are better than we are because of what they have today. But I tell you this right now, we had a great coach and we had a great owner. Our coach was Red Auerbach, and our owner was Walter Brown. And believe me, they talk about Boston, but Boston was the first to draft a black player in the NBA, Chuck Cooper. First to have a black coach in Bill Russell, and first to have a starting team of all black players in 1964. Bill Russell, Pat Sanders, Willie Knowles, Casey Jones, and Sam Jones. And we knew that we had to win because looking at the stands, it was the white people who were buying those tickets. And if we didn't win, we knew they were not coming back. And then we went on to win 3 straight championships with those black starters.
An amazing run, and we'll get to some of those stories here with Sam Jones, the all-time great from the Boston Celtics, a 10-time NBA champion, part of the league's 50th anniversary team. He wore number 24 and scored 24 points in his last game as a pro. It's the 757 at 6 here on ESPN Radio 94.1. The Legends Update brought to you by our friend, the living legend from Norview High School, Coach Charles Hatcher, Sports Inside and Out, the Legends of Sports. Check out the podcast, Facebook page, and much more. Sam, you referenced him, Red Auerbach, arguably the greatest coach of all time in professional basketball. I'm sure you have countless stories, and particularly in a time like you sort of referenced, socially it was a different world back then, and Red was just a unique guy, wasn't he?
He was a great guy. We went to Kentucky to play an exhibition game. Adolph Rupp, the coach, said he would never have a black player on his team. They had great teams. We stayed in this hotel, and we went downstairs to eat, and they told us they don't feed black people in the dining room. And so we were not served, and we went back, and I was getting ready to pack my bags to go back to Boston, but Russell said, let's go speak to Coach first. And after we finished talking with Coach, he took us to the airport. We went back to Boston. That's a game that we missed, and it was not Coach's fault, it was the league's fault, because they were supposed to find out that this hotel would feed us and house us. And it was odd that they let us stay there, but we could not eat. So we did not play the game.
That's something else. Now, speaking on Red a little more, as well as Bill Russell and your teammates there, Bob Cousy and Casey Jones, those guys. I mean, before Robert Horry was the clutch shooter and Steve Kerr and Reggie Miller, there was a guy named Sam Jones who was known as the shooter, and you made a lot of clutch plays and big shots down the stretch of some championship runs. How much confidence did Red, as well as those teammates like Bill and Bob and Casey and others, having you down the stretch, and what did that give you as a player?
Well, first of all, it's not about who starts the game. It's about where you are at the end of the game. It's when it counts most, when you really need baskets. And I was one of those players who always wanted the ball in clutch time because I knew that the players had the confidence in me and the ability that I would make the shot. But I felt good about it because I knew that my teammates would get me open for this shot. And many times it meant losing a NBA championship game or falling way behind. So they called on me to take the shot, and I felt good about it. And so in many 6 or 7 NBA finals, they called on me and I came through for them. And that's what I like about it. We had some great players. Sometimes you have players who don't want the ball in clutch time. They look away from the coach. I looked at the coach because I was very confident. Give me the ball and get out of the way, and let's go and win this game. And that's the way I felt.
Sam, who were the biggest influences on your life and on your career?
Well, I think it was my father died when I was 4 years old. My mother had a lot to do with what happened to me, and then I got married as soon as I graduated from North Carolina College in Durham, North Carolina. I married a young lady that I had moved with, and she was the biggest influence in my life. In fact, she is probably the reason that I played professional basketball.
Really?
Yes, I'll tell you this. Her father, when I asked her father about getting married, he says, all I want you to do is take care of my daughter. And I said I would. And I had this job offered to me. Now, you got to put this in perspective. The Celtics had just won their first World Championship. And if you were a coach, and those players are going to stay for the next year, and they had won your first championship, you're not going to cut any of those players. At that particular time, Boston only carried 10 players, as many as the other teams. And I told my wife, I think I better take this job teaching school because your dad said I had to take care of you, and I know that I have a job. And she says, if you don't try out for the Boston Celtics, you will think about this for the rest of your life. So you've got to go and see what you have. I said, is that the way you really feel? She said, yes. I says, okay, don't forget, I told you what your dad said. The Celtics, not guaranteed, but my job teaching school is. And if I go to the Celtics, they will have hired someone else. My whole life had changed because I made the team and I played for 12 years and I had 12 outstanding years. And I really do believe that God and my wife had faith in me.